West Dakota Fox News at 9. Wild weather is banning Bismarck travelers from going wheels up. Plus, a dangerous job caught on a dash cam. But first, the health and wealth of North Dakota in the annual State of the State address.
This is West Dakota Fox News at 9 with Molly Martinez and meteorologist Henry Blakes. Your first news of the night starts right now on West Dakota Fox News at 9.
Good evening, I'm Molly Martinez. Today, North Dakota was watching as Governor Doug Burgum delivered his State of the State address. The pulse check was delivered from Minot with a Democratic rebuttal at the state capitol. Bo Evans was there.
This chamber is where the governor would traditionally give his State of the State address, but this year, Governor Doug Burgum is shaking things up.
State of the State is one of unlimited promise and potential, provided that we embrace change, we diversify our economy, and we harness the unstoppable forces of technology.
The governor discussed some of the challenges of his first year, like the pipeline protests and the drought, but also looked forward to 2018 and how he'd like to bring the state's education system into the future. However, Democrats pointed to what they think are mistakes made during the last legislative session, which will impact North Dakotans.
Make no mistake about it. This year and next, North Dakotans will see property tax increases.
The Democrats and the governor did agree on one thing, however.
War on drugs is tough on taxpayers. That's what it is. We need to come up with solutions that solve the problem and work for taxpayers.
Behavioral health funding is something the legislature has promised to North Dakotans, but so far we've failed to deliver.
State Democrats have expressed their willingness to go to the table with Governor Doug Burgum and work together to make the state stronger.
Typically, the governor is expected to deliver the address in front of the legislature at the Capitol. But today's presentation at Minot State University wasn't the first time the speech has hit the road. Former Governor Ed Schaefer switched venues throughout his entire term. A few were held at the Heritage Center and one at the House Chamber. Schaefer said he felt the need to break with tradition.
It was basically to say there's something else out there besides, doing things from Bismarck. So it was pretty much to launch the Main Street Initiative, as far as I know.
After the Capitol burned down in 1930, the next year's State of the State address had to be moved. The Senate met in the Memorial Building and the House met in the City Auditorium in downtown Bismarck. Time now for the State of the Forecast with meteorologist Henry Blakes.
Molly, the rest of your forecast, I'll have that coming up later on.
A disturbing report out of Richland County tonight. The Sheriff's Department is investigating 44 students in Colfax after parents reported that high school boys are sexually assaulting middle school boys. They first brought the allegations to administrators who determined that something called a rape game was going on. They say upperclassmen would turn off the lights and pin down the younger boys, violating them. They say last week, the athletic director, the principal, and the superintendent held a meeting with all of the boys. 5 upperclassmen were suspended. Investigators have been taking statements from the victims. Tonight, there are concerns this is a pattern of abuse, with some parents indicating that some of the offenders have already moved on to college. Tonight, autopsy results are answering some questions in the mysterious death of a Mandan man on Friday. Police say the head injury the man suffered was superficial and likely not the cause of death. Medical examiners are now waiting on the toxicology report. 2 people are in custody tonight after a major marijuana bust in Stutsman County. Police say Nia Lee of Minnesota and B. Thor of Wisconsin had 467 pounds of pot in their car. They were pulled over Sunday morning off I-94. Both men are facing charges of possession of a controlled substance with intent to deliver and possession of drug paraphernalia. Well, we told you in November about a man who was arrested and charged with starting a fire at his home and tampering with evidence. Today, graffiti is scribbled on that home. It reads, "Spencer is innocent." Spencer Norton is the man arrested in connection with the fire. He goes to trial in May. We spoke to neighbors today, and they are not happy with how this corner home is making their community look.
We're concerned that it's going to sit like that for months, if not years. We want it taken care of. There's going to be a rodent issue. It devalues everybody's property in the area. It's terrible, and we shouldn't have to look at it forever.
A city spokesman said the city does not have a role unless it is a public health or safety concern. The North Dakota Coalition for Homeless People has shut down due to lack of funding. The sudden closing doesn't affect the Missouri Valley Coalition here locally. That's because the regional coalition doesn't receive money from the state.
The coalition will continue to work hard to provide shelter and services for the homeless. Currently, I'm working with numerous organizations to put a long-term plan together for an emergency shelter that's needed in the community.
Funding for the regional coalition isn't being affected by the closing. Well, if you're headed to North Dakota's federal parks, you're in luck. They're back open after the government shutdown. Those parks include Theodore Roosevelt National Park, the Knife River Indian Villages, and Fort Union Trading Post. Well, several years after flooding destroyed much of Bismarck, the Fort Abraham Lincoln Foundation is trying to bring life back to the riverbank. Andrew Horn shows us what the community stands to gain. Welcome back. All week, federal agents are raiding unlikely places in hopes of catching undocumented immigrants. The practice has drawn sharp criticism from some, while others say it's just the fulfillment of a Trump presidency promise. Phil Keating has the story.
President Trump pushing his crackdown on illegal immigration into the new year. Raids being reported across the country. Over the weekend, federal agents boarded a Greyhound bus in Florida, asking for proof of citizenship from the passengers and arresting at least one woman.
Imagine what her family felt, not knowing where she was the entire weekend. A lady, a grandmother, that was literally just taking a trip from Orlando to Miami.
In a separate incident in Michigan, the feds detained a Polish-American doctor who was a legal U.S. resident, all because he had 2 misdemeanor convictions from 26 years ago. It's part of a pattern that has seen officials focusing on immigrants who aren't from South or Central American countries as illegal immigration from those nations falls, due to what many are calling the Trump effect.
Often, communities are very surprised when someone who they consider exceptional is targeted for immigration enforcement.
The White House says the president is fulfilling his promise to get illegal immigration under control, and congressional Republicans are supporting that effort, planning new legislation to increase funding for enforcement and the border wall.
The man accused of a deadly October terror attack along a New York City bike path appeared in court today. Authorities say the suspect used a rental truck for the crime, killing 8 people. If convicted, the 29-year-old could face the death penalty. We're learning that U.S. citizens are among the victims in a terror attack this weekend at an Afghanistan hotel. The 13-hour siege started Saturday when Taliban militants in suicide vests entered the Kabul hotel. The death toll has now risen to 22. Back stateside, at least one person was killed in a highway pileup today in Missouri. More than a dozen cars and a tractor trailer were mangled in the wreck. This is on Interstate 64 near I-270. The cause of the crash is under investigation. A short time ago, a big rig went airborne along a Houston interstate. Police say the 18-wheeler fell from the Interstate 10 bridge onto the lanes below. No word on what caused that crash or if there were any injuries. And dash cams were rolling as a drunk driver slams into a California Highway Patrol cruiser. This is in San Jose. The green SUV collides into several cars before T-boning the CHP cruiser. Luckily, nobody was seriously hurt in the crash. 16 students were hurt when a school bus overturned in Georgia yesterday morning. The Clear Creek Middle School students suffered non-life-threatening injuries. It's unclear how the bus ended up on its side. And a huge mess in Ohio after a train derailed, scattering 53 rail cars. This is near Attica. The shipping containers were carrying washing machines and electronics. There were no injuries. The cause of that crash also under investigation. Across the Atlantic, parts of Paris are underwater today after a 1-2 punch of torrential downpours. Residents living on the barges of the Seine have been told to move to higher ground, and riverboat cruises are suspended until the water recedes. From flooding in France to avalanches in Italy, helicopters had to rescue mountain-stranded tourists in the Alps today. Officials say about 10,000 people were stuck because of the snow in the town of Tirolo. Some stranding snow stateside too. Much of Minnesota is digging out of a blizzard today, and flurries aren't the only thing causing fury. Winds are clocking in at 40 miles an hour. That's caused a nightmare for travelers at Minneapolis-St. Paul. Between 500 and 600 travelers were stranded at MSP because of the storm. And because of that said blizzard, Delta had to cancel 4 out of 5 flights from Bismarck to Minneapolis yesterday. 2 more were canceled today. Bismarck Airport Director Greg Haug says Delta and United flights are expected to operate smoothly tomorrow. More on that now. Over to Henry for a full look at our forecast.
Yeah, thankfully they'll be able to get back home because now we're having to deal with chances of fog.
Welcome back. Ulta Beauty may be trying to conceal a blemish in their business practice. A woman claiming to be a former employee says the company repackages and resells used makeup. She also posted images to her Twitter highlighting what she says is returned merchandise, adding that employees simply clean the products before sticking them back on the shelves. Well, Key Largo, Florida is a new habitat for a huge manatee. A manatee named Commander was brought into rehab after suffering a boat strike. He was very thin and lethargic, but was nursed back to health. He was released today. Well, one of the biggest hits from this weekend's Eagles-Vikings game actually happened before kickoff. A die-hard Eagles fan decided to run alongside a subway train before getting sacked by a support beam. The video has since gone viral and was captured from 2 different angles. The man was a little dinged up, but is expected to be okay. Henry, I love the Eagles, but I think this video shows not all Eagles are meant to fly.
Yeah, definitely not in his case. Definitely watch where you're going, especially tonight, because the dense fog advisory is in effect until 6 o'clock from Minot all the way through Bismarck and down to Emmons, Logan, and McIntosh County until 6 Wednesday morning. Otherwise, yes, we are going to be waking up to a bit of cloud cover, but then the fog lifts. We become partly sunny, south wind 5 to 10, and highs in the 30s and possibly some 40s across the southwest.
All right, thanks, and we'll see you tomorrow.